Hey everybody, this is Tammy Van Hollander of Mainline Play Therapy, and today is a super special day. I am here with Patrice Karst, the author of The Invisible String, and Dr. Dana Wyss, who wrote the Invisible String workshop and workbooks. And this is such a special day for me. And I just had mentioned to Patrice before we went on that this book has been such a staple of my playroom, of from divorce, from loss to closure to children moving. I mean, almost everything you could think of in a child's life has to do with the invisible string. And Dana, I know you and I both, in terms of the work that we do and the work with attachment and the work with connection to children, that there is nothing more important. And I think of the last page, Patrice, of this book, that no one is ever alone. And that's all we hope for children with their trauma, not being alone in their trauma, having those attachment pieces, always feeling connected. And the invisible string gives that gives them that magical string to always be connected, right? Anywhere and everywhere. And it's super special. So Patrice, thank you so much. And Dana for coming. So,
Yeah.
and Patrice, I want you to be able, I'd love to hear a little bit of your inspiration of the invisible string. I think it's sold way over 500,000 copies, along with, I'm sure there's a higher number, with all of your other amazing books too that you could share with us.
Thank you, first of all, so much, Tammy, for having us today. And it's always a pleasure to talk about the invisible string. And I want to show your viewers, because they may recognize the book like this. And this is the
Hey,
paperback version, and the newer version of the book, you're holding up the hardback copy. So it's the same story, just different art. And this is the newer version with a letter from me to the reader and stuff. So the inspiration for the invisible string happened a long time ago when I was a full-time single working mom. And my little boy at the time, Elijah, would get really sad when I would have to say goodbye and go to work at school. And so he would stand in the door of the school and cry, and it was horrible. And one day, because nothing that I tried telling him, was working. And one day I just, without thinking about it, just kind of off the cuff, I said what to me was pretty obvious, which is we're connected all day long by an invisible string. So just tug on it when you miss me, and I'll feel it and I'll tug you back. And it literally cured, healed his separation anxiety in one moment, like one moment, when he got the visual idea, the conceptual idea of a string that connected him to me all day long and me to him. That was all he needed. So then all of his little friends wanted to hear the story of the invisible string, because they had heard about this wondrous magical string. And I watched their reactions and their questions about, does the string go to my grandpa in Mexico? Does the string go to my hamster? Does the string, they had so many questions. It was such a rich, lush landscape for them to suddenly realize that they were connected to. So I knew I had something special. And I wrote it up as a children's story, because I didn't know how else to get that simple message out in the world. But I thought, children's story would be a good way to do it. And I went to a small publisher that I happened to know and sent him the copy of the book and asked him if he would be interested, and he was. And so it came out in 2000 in the hardback that you showed. And it did really well. It was very well received. And I got beautiful letters from educators and caretakers and therapists loving the book, and parents. But it wasn't until the book had been out about 10 years. So now we're talking about 10 years ago, when I don't know what to call it other than a phenomena occurred. And suddenly I started to see that the invisible string was being used within the military for deployed families that are separated. And it was being used in the prison system for incarcerated parents to stay connected to their children. Adoption groups, foster groups, divorce lawyers, hospices, hospitals, social workers, grief groups. There wasn't any place it wasn't. First day of school, baby, baby showers, graduation gifts, spouses buying it for one another, adult children for their adult parents, and vice versa. And it just exponentially, soared into the universe. And that was really incredible. And when the pandemic happened is when it just went next level, because suddenly that need for all of us, let alone the children, that need to realize that we are connected to our loved ones, even though we can't be in the physical same space, was, needed more than ever. And I started to get requests from, starting in March of 2020, I started to get requests from all over the world, from teachers and chaplains and therapists and librarians, everybody asking copyright permission. Could they record themselves reading the book to the kids or do a lesson on it or what have you? And of course, my answer every time was yes, 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 and yes. Oh, and some more yes, please. Thank you. And it's been a miracle. It's been an ongoing, wondrous miracle. And 3 years ago, I had the paperback rights still to the book, and I decided to sell those rights. And so my agents at the time got me a lovely 4-book deal, which now is 5 books and now 6 because I'm working on the next one. And that's where with Dana and I had met years ago. She had written me a lovely, letter and letting me know, and she can tell her version of the story, but wrote and let me know that one of the youths that she was working with in her work had loved the book. It had meant a lot to her, and she had made a card for me, and Dana wanted my address to mail me the card. And when I saw that she was local, I said, let's get together. And during that lunch, she told me all the different activities and creative ways she was using the Invisible String workbook, and her therapist friends were using the workbook. I said, we should do a workbook. We should do something. And we signed an agreement on a paper napkin in the restaurant that we were going to do this thing, and we'd split it 50-50. And we did it. And she wrote, primarily with my kind of overseeing, Dana created this brilliant workbook that's full of games and exercises and puzzles and journal activities and creative activities to take the message of the invisible string to the next level for the people that are working with it. So I'll just show real quick the books that are in the Invisible String brand, because each one of them kind of helps the rest of their siblings in the family. So there's the Invisible String, which you know about, obviously. And then there's the Invisible Leash. And the Invisible Leash came as a result of a lot of people writing to me and saying, we use the invisible string all the time to use for death of animals, but could you write one specifically for the loss of our pets? So now the Invisible Leash is well on its way to being one of the big books to help children and adults grieve the loss and celebrate the love of their animals, because we are connected by an invisible leash. Then when all of the invisible strings of the world connect and intersect and weave together, we realize we are living in an invisible web. And that's what this world is. We are all interconnected. One pull on one part of the web affects someone else on the other side of the world. So it's truly string theory and interconnectedness. And then for the babies, we have You Are Never Alone, an Invisible String Lullaby. And it's a lovely board book with just sweetest, beautiful illustrations. And it's for babies and toddlers to start to get the message of the invisible string. So there's that. And then, of course, the workbook. And I could never have done this. I mean, Dana literally just took the ball and ran with it. So did I make a smart decision in the restaurant that day? Because I knew she knew what she was talking about, and she did. And she created something that now we're getting amazing reviews, and therapists and, educators and social workers and everybody's using all over the world the Invisible String Workbook. So I've said a lot. I'll let Dana talk.
Okay,
So I guess I
Patrice,
can
thank
talk a
you.
little bit about how I found Patrice. So probably now this was 11 years ago. It was my first day at my new job. Had just become a trainer. And they said, you're going to train this trauma-informed care stuff. And I was like, well, am I going to get trained in it first? What's going to happen? They're like, no, you know it. We interviewed you. You're fine. Just do it. And I was panicking. And it was probably about 2 weeks before my very first training. And I was out to dinner, Abbott Kinney, actually nearby where we met, which is one of the reasons we met where we did, on Abbott Kinney, just wandering around with my friend after dinner. And we were at a bookstore. And it was like this spiritual, really beautiful bookstore with all this amazing energy around. And I picked up this children's book and I looked at it and I read it and I put it back. And I went to look around for my friend and I looked at her, and she's also a therapist. And I said, I think I just found my training. She goes, what do you mean? And I was like, this book is my training. Like, this is my training. Like, this is my trauma-informed care training. And I picked up that book. And from that moment on, that was the very first thing I would read people in my trauma-informed care trainings. And so probably about 4 years passed, I would make a joke all the time in my trainings that like, oh, I wonder who wrote this book. Like, like kind of being jealous of her, like, this is so brilliant. How'd you think of this? And then we were using it and the clients were using it and they were loving it. And actually 2 things happened, 2 clients at the same time and a group that I was training all made me reach out to Patrice. So one client wrote a poem that was beautiful about the book. And then the other client and I were reading it. So I would read it to this client and then she would read it to her son. She had never really had a connection with him. She had experience being trafficked. Her son was from her trafficker and she was always ambivalent and kind of stuck between going back to the trafficker and staying with her son, because if she went back to him, she would lose the contact with her son. And so we were using the book not only to talk about connection, but then also when he visited, she would borrow my book and read it to him. And it was so beautiful. And she wanted to give Patrice a card. And so that's when I was like, oh, the kids are telling me to reach out to Patrice, ha ha ha, like she'll write back. And all the group was like, well, you might as well. She has an email address, just try it out. And by the end of the day, she had written back. And I will say to everyone listening, if you email Patrice, she will write you back, because she feels very strongly about that. She tells me all the time, Dana, if anyone writes you about the string, you better email them back right away. That's very important. That's part of the string message. And so
Well, it's true. I mean, it really is. I think those personal relationships, because each person that you write back, you develop a string with them, and then they're telling, it's like, then they become little string ambassadors out there in the world. So
it was so cute. I don't even know if I told you this, Patrice, but recently, because in the book at the very beginning, we both write kind of like how we found each other. And I write about the poem, and I said a therapist shared a poem with me that one of her clients wrote and blah, blah, blah. And one of the clients found me and emailed me and said, oh my God, and took pictures and said, I'm the poem girl. That's my therapist. You mentioned us in the book. And I obviously couldn't name them, and we couldn't publish the poem, but it was just so beautiful. And it became one of the activities in the book. So it was just such a great way. And I think the other thing I would say about the workbook in particular is that all the books, we wanted them very accessible to anyone. You know, as an expressive therapist and an art therapist, and now a blossoming play therapist, we didn't want it just to be for therapists. We wanted the book that a parent could pick up this book and do it with their kid, that a teacher could pick it up and use it in part of their lesson plan. We really wanted it accessible to everyone. And then someone who has play therapy, art therapy, marriage and family therapy, psychology skills could elevate it and take it even deeper if they wanted to. But we really wanted the base level of it. I think the whole team, publishers, illustrators, Patrice, to me, all wanted it so anyone could pick it up and really use it.
Yeah. And it's used by everybody. I mean, I will have families going through a divorce. I will have so many different families that I am recommending the workbook to. And especially during the pandemic, when there's all these breaks in connections and they don't know what to do with their kids, what better activity to be doing than so many of the beautiful activities in the book. And you know, Dana, we met at the Expressive Therapy Summit, and I was able to take Dana's Invisible String workbook because how could I not? It being my favorite book. And just there's so many creative interventions, and you use music, and just so you're just so unbelievably creative and thoughtful, and just the heart and the energy of all the books and the workbooks are just you feel the healing capacity of that. And you and I are going to have a plan. We're having a part 2 of this video, and you're going to share some of your favorite ones. We'll do the whiteboard and some of
Oh,
those
yes.
pieces.
Because that's the other thing. We've also had to adapt everything through the pandemic. This was
Yes.
created to be kind of live and in person. And through the pandemic, I had to recreate everything for all these conferences to like, how do I do all these activities online? I'm like, we're going to have an addendum book for if you're online.
But you did such a wonderful job of being able to adapt so many of the things in the workbook for, for online and for telehealth.
Yeah.
Did Dana tell you about yesterday?
No.
So yesterday, the television show The View on ABC featured the invisible string, and Sarah Haynes is her name. I think it's Sarah Haynes was the View host. She said, and she got all choked up talking about it. She said that one of her children's teachers had given them a copy of the book and how the whole family uses it now. And her daughter says, "Mommy, did you feel me tugging your heartstrings today?" And she couldn't have said enough nice things about it. And that propelled the book so that all day yesterday it was number 3 of all books. And today it's number 5/6, going back and forth, but it's up there with all the big political books right now. And I just think it's so perfectly ironic, there's be like, I don't remember all the titles of them, but this one and this one, there's all the political, drama going on, and then the invisible string.
Just right in the middle, right in the middle of all of them.
Because, just where it should be.
It shows there's just this goodness in the world, and this idea of being connected with love to everyone, and that there's so much hope in it, when there's been a time when we haven't had a lot of hope. And there's just, I mean, I think of it all the time, like my heart's always tugging, and every time I feel anything in my heart, literally, Patrice, I'm like, it's the invisible string, like like who's thinking of me right now, or who am I thinking of? Like I literally live, I feel like part of an invisible string life, because I have such strong connections and so fortunate of friends and family and colleagues that we all have such amazing, beautiful connections. But having this concept of the invisible string makes them so much stronger, more authentic, and real. Like we really feel that tug, which
That's
is
so beautiful. It really is. It's just so sweet to watch how this such a simple, concept for the very big abstract idea of love, this tangible visual of an invisible string, has brought so much comfort, because it's not like it's the most brilliant concept in the world. It's just the most simple concept that we are connected by an invisible string. And by the way, the invisible string is global, because we're published now. The book has been translated into 15 different languages, and there'll be a lot more. But yeah, this message is timeless. It's there's the Spanish and the French. Is that the French? Les filles
This one's the
invisibles.
French.
Yeah, and we have like Vietnamese and Romanian and Japanese. I mean, I can't even, like, so many countries, and it'll like obscure, and Greece, and so it's just a lot. Israel. Yeah, it's a lot of fun watching. Yeah, I mean, it's beyond fun. It's just sort of this, I don't know, honor, really, just to watch what started as an expression of love for me to my son, who was 5 probably at the time, and to just watch the love keep going and going and going and going. And, what could be a better job than to get to talk about love all day long? It's a pretty sweet gig,
It is. And there's nothing not, I do a lot of bibliotherapy in my playroom and I use a lot of books, and just having parents and children sitting together and reading the book and hearing when parents begin, they listen to it, and then because they don't know where the book is going, and then this piece of it, and just watching the connection and the energy of the parent and the child of reading the book, knowing nothing about the book and not
Mhm.
knowing, what's going to come out of it, is just, yeah, it's truly, it's such a gift.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm really glad that, and I always say Dana's message is, hey, you know what, if you want to reach out to an author, reach out, or anybody, reach out, go do it. And personal connections are everything.
Yes.
And I would just say, along those same lines, that if you get an idea, if something in your life shows up as, wow, that's a really, then do something with it. I have so many people that will come up to me and say, oh, I've got some books inside of me. I've got ideas for books. And I like, what do they want me to say? We'll get the idea outside of you and on paper and,
Right.
do it, make it happen. So I'm fortunate that day, when I saw what happened with my son, that the wheel started turning. Maybe you should do something with this idea here. So,
Yeah.
and 20 years later, here we are.
So Patrice, where can people find all of your books? I'm sure they're on Amazon, but is
Right.
there?
Anywhere that books are sold, Amazon, of course, Barnes and Noble, Target, Walmart, or they can go to my website if they want autographed books, which is patricekarst.com. But yeah, wherever you get your books, wherever your local bookstores, wherever you enjoy getting your books, that's the best place to get my books.
Okay. Okay. And I'm going to put that all underneath. And Dana, so it's very exciting that Dana, who is an expressive arts therapist, is now. Dana, can you just say one thing before we end? Because we have so many play therapists out there. And the fact of you connected with all of this and now the play therapy community is super exciting.
Well, so it actually, Tammy, you're part of this. So when I met Tammy, it was at the conference. And when you approached me and said, play therapists love your book, I said in that moment, I had been thinking about play therapy a lot. And I was like, uh-oh, I better become a play therapist so I know how to talk about it the right way to all the play therapists in the world. And it took me a while, but I think during the pandemic, I found a program down in San Diego that I'll be driving to eventually, but was online for a while. So I could really catch up some hours and found a really cool supervisor. And I've just been diving into the world of play therapy and I love it even more. And I think my expressive therapies PhD is really when I was actually writing this book, the workbook, while I was writing my dissertation.
Wow.
So that was like my break time for my dissertation was to write the workbook and the activities. But now I'm even able to, I'm hoping to elevate more and think about more activities and more ways we can build and do stuff in the future. Now that we have all these other books too, just, you know, any way to expand it. So I'm so excited to be in the play therapy world now and to be diving into it and learning. I chose probably the hardest client in the world as my first client, but I'll get a lot of experience.
Well, we are welcoming you with open arms and
Oh.
very excited about it. So I just want to thank you guys both so much. This was a true treat, and it's going to be a treat to so many people who are listening, because none of us have ever really, we haven't seen you or met you, Patrice or Dana, and being able to just we're all such fans. And it's really nice to see a face and the beautiful
Oh, so
energy
nice.
behind
It's so
it.
nice. I can't wait till we're all doing this stuff in person again.